All right, football fans, welcome to a Thursday episode of the Call Sheet Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Normally on Thursdays, we do a State of the Franchise show where we talk about one of the 32 NFL franchises, and I usually bring on somebody who covers that team, but had the privilege yesterday to interview Kevin Stefanski, head coach of the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to follow up on that show today by doing a bit of a coaching roundtable. I'm going to bring in a couple of coaches here in South Jersey, very successful coaches who have been through the process. And we're going to kind of look at the high school version of what Coach Stefanski is doing in the NFL with the Browns. So let me bring in my guests. Returning to the show, been here 3 times. This is his 4th time on the show. Coach Steve Scanlon from Egg Harbor Township High School, former head coach at Clearview. Welcome back, Steve.
Thank you, Coach. Great to be on today, and that was a really eye-opening episode with Coach Stefanski.
It was pretty cool, and he's an incredibly generous individual with both his time and his thoughts, and I'm eager to get your thoughts on this. And now also welcome to the show, head football coach at Cherry Hill East High School, Tyler Drob. Tyler, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Coach, listening now for a little while, and definitely heard the Stefanski episodes. Some interesting stuff in there.
Yeah. So Tyler, I'm going to start with you. I want to put this out there to anybody who's listening. So Tyler is the head football coach at Cherry Hill East. Steve and Tyler were talking before the show. Steve played at Cherry Hill East, actually coached Tyler when he was a player there. And I didn't know this until you guys just said this, but Cherry Hill East at one point went through a 40-game losing streak. And Coach Drob this past season led them to a 9-1 record, a playoff victory. When's the last time you guys won a playoff game?
1991. So it was a big accomplishment for us. It was over 30 years. It was one of our goals going into the season. Obviously, as a lot of people didn't think it was possible, maybe from the outside and everything, but we believed in it. It was a huge accomplishment for the whole program and the whole community. Bring football back a little bit. Yeah, and
I mean, my gosh, man, 30-some years. That's tremendous. Coach Scanlon, I'd imagine you got a little pride there, right, in your protege here, right, for bringing back the program.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like we were saying before, like Tyler was a great player, has always been a great person. He's had great teammates. When he played, the team was probably had his junior and senior year, had more wins than the 15 years before combined and about the 10 years after combined. So it's no shock knowing the kind of person he is, that he would dedicate himself to coaching and that he's helped continue to build and develop the program. And I thought they were one of the best teams in Group 5 last year, and they certainly proved it on the field and in the playoffs.
Tyler, we're going to get into all this stuff as we go through this, but real quick, give me one thing that you feel was really key in helping you turn East around, right? What's one thing that you think that you've done that's really helped to bring the program back?
Yeah, man, I go back to just kind of the core values. I know every coach has things that they, try to touch on. We have an acronym, FACTS, that stands for, 5 different things, like family, accountability, competition, toughness, sportsmanship. I think it's those things in the middle where we became, a disciplined and accountable program, and football became serious for everybody involved. And they just really found commitment in the game, whether it was the family, whether it was, the players, the coaches. I do remember even after the playoff win getting asked kind of the same question. The first thing I said was just the commitment of everybody in the program, just how everyone, it wasn't just a sport anymore. It was, it was important. It meant a lot to everybody in the off season, which is what we're talking about, how, that off season commitment and how everyone understood it's like a year round, it is a year round commitment. And the guys really bought into that, and it translated to the field.
That it's a huge deal, right? And so if we can pick up with where Coach Stefanski and I left off, I started that interview yesterday by asking him, I said, hey, Coach, your 2024 season ended the first week of January 4th to be exact. When did your 2025 season begin? And he said the very next day. And they start their process immediately. For you guys, now Steve, you're at EHT now. You've been a head coach at Clearview. What did that process look like? When did you really begin with your guys for the next season?
So I kind of did it in waves, but I always thought, it's funny, as I was approaching a season, I was not that you move on from it, but you kind of have in the back of your head some things building up of, we have to improve this, or I have to see this player develop, and I got to help this player become, this fit in our system, whatever it might be. I actually think one of the coolest things in a football season, I think the hardest year of your football career is your sophomore year of high school. One of the things I use as a gauge is how many sophomores are kind of the light bulbs going on, and they're starting to get better. We were really excited. Like we felt like a receiver last year was starting to come on, and then you look up halfway through the season, he has a couple catches in a varsity game, and he looks good. Now he looks the part as a junior even more this summer. Probably our best, most explosive returning offensive lineman. Well, he started to rotate halfway through. So you kind of get these little seeds of what can kind of bridge the gap going into the next season. But for me, a few things that were always on a checklist were I wanted to have a year-end evaluation, kind of like an autopsy with our fellow coaches. And as an assistant or as a head coach, I always felt really strongly about that. And I felt like those had to be brutally honest. And to me, brutally honest, like isn't a difficult thing, because the ultimate goal is for everyone to improve. So I wanted to hear like the non-sugar-coated version of, what do you need more from me? Or where do you think my shortcomings or failures? How can I make this better for you as an assistant, or you as the head coach, or you as a player? The second kind of component of that is like I wanted to have our offseason mapped out. But the big one was I wanted to have a year-end evaluation with every player coming back to the team in person. And I did it a couple different ways, but this year I feel like it went the best. We would give guys a grade, A, B, C, or D, kind of in between. A is a kid that's got offers. D is a kid that's not ready to play varsity football, and everything in between. And we would talk about kind of the intangible aspects. It's like, here's what you do well off of the field or not necessarily physical that helps you. Then we had a column that was, here's kind of where you stand from a physical outlook, right? Here's what you do well on the field. Here's what you got to improve. And then it was, where do we see you today, and where do you stand coming into next season? And I feel like one of the things I noticed is like the players that have the higher grade, they have the more things that they can focus on trying to improve. And that's kind of like the Spider-Man with great how does he word it? With great talent comes great responsibility kind of thing. But that's always kind of bounced back to me, like the player that has more opportunities and more on his plate, I'm going to push further than the player that's very limited in what they can handle and improve upon. But those were like the two major things I felt like held up everything else before I could move on to the next part of the season, was telling players where they stand. And I felt like it helped players turn the page and kind of build up their confidence and built that excitement and really charged them up for diving into the next 10 months of the off season.
Right. Now, Tyler, how does that process look for you, especially coming off of a 9-1 season, a historic season for your program? Obviously, I'm assuming there's a lot of enthusiasm now. How do you take advantage of that to build upon it as you go through your off season?
Yeah, I think first thing when you were asking me the question about last time we won a playoff game, I knew that like the back of my hand last year. Right? And I had to think about it now just because we just moved forward so quick, like how Coach Scanlon was saying, like I moved on, really right away. Like we want to take the positives from it, the negatives where we have to improve. But we had meetings, that week after our season ended in the second round of the playoffs. I did meet with every player this year, which I thought was really good. And players would meet with their position coach as well afterwards and get some feedback from them. We actually had the players rate themselves on like a Google form in terms of how they thought they did on the field, how they thought they did in the weight room, how they thought they did in the classroom. Just getting that feedback from them this year, which we didn't do in the past. It allowed us to kind of sit down, allowed me to see what their goals were, and give them that plan right away. I think that's really important, especially in high school, to do it quick. When guys go into wrestling or basketball, it's happening quick to transition to winter sports. So we wanted to make sure we did that and set them goals, whether they're going to be with us, in our off-season program and working out and moving forward. And then in terms of your second part of that question with the expectations, I think we tried to we're trying to really grab that now, like in the summer, and have them guys live up to the standard. And that was kind of one of our mottos this season, really our main motto, the new standard. And we want them to, understand, the players graduate, but we want to keep that standard, what it was. And we do expect you guys to be at that level. So I think that's motivated them. Obviously, when you have a really good season, you lose players in high school. We can't keep them around. We want to. They come out to practice in the summer now. You guys want to, stay for an extra year. You want to stick around, but, we know that doesn't happen. So now we need them guys to kind of raise their level and get to that level that we saw last year, and then beyond that. So that's what we're trying to do, through the off season and now in the summer.
It's interesting. You talk to Coach Stefanski, or you talk to an NFL coach, and they have to deal with free agency. Well, we have to deal with graduation, and they're not exactly the same. But the idea that like you can't always keep your best guys is frustrating. I don't even like losing them to another sport, like you mentioned at times. Yeah, you want to keep them close. One thing that I thought he when I talked to him that he had a really interesting response to, I asked him about coaching evaluations, and have you ever had to move on from coaches? And he said, of course he has, and it's a very difficult thing because these are people's livelihoods. This is their profession. This is how they make their living. You never want to put somebody out of a job, but at the same time, that's also your responsibility because you're looking out for your own job and for the best interests of your own program. How do you guys handle your coaching evaluations? And have you ever had to move on from a coach? And if so, how difficult was that? What was that process like? Yeah, whoever, man, jump in.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll take it.
Sure.
Yeah, so in terms of evaluations, we do have to do, kind of like a formality one for the district because we are in Cherry Hill. We get renewed every year. Everyone has to really like reapply, renew their contract. So I do have to do an assistant coach evaluation, more of like just a formality. In terms of feedback, I try to give them things, that they can work on, that they can do better. But I really think if I'm giving them that in December and January, I mean, it's so far away from when we actually hit the field in the summer. That doesn't always make a huge difference. So I try to hone in on this thing before we hit the field in the summer, and things I want them to improve on. Just consistent coaching meetings throughout the off season as well, so they know kind of where we stand and the expectations, that I have and everything. Because I think it's like with the players or a coach, we tell them something in November right when the season ends, and we bring it back up in the middle of July. We can't just expect it to change. I think that's big with them. We've had coaches that left the program, even not, I'd say maybe even mutual, whether it be work and different things. We haven't had to get rid of anybody, and I'm only going into my 4th year as a head coach. The one thing, and I think Coach would agree on this, it's tough to find good coaches now. It's tough to find a lot of coaches, especially in high school. We're not getting paid in any fantastic way. So I'm trying to keep guys around. Roles might change, and somebody might take on more responsibility, just if I think they're more capable. Those are things that we've had, but we're trying to keep as many guys that are, dedicated and do the right thing for the kids and care about the program as we can have around. We'll take anybody who wants to, work for the kids and do the right things.
Yeah, you're not lying, man. It is challenging. People just don't have a lot of free time to devote for little money. The job description is, hey, do you want to put in a ridiculous amount of hours and get paid almost nothing for it? Well, there aren't a lot of guys jumping at that. What about you, Steve?
I think it's funny you bring up. I was really interested to hear his answer when you asked him that yesterday, and because everyone that's had to get fired or changed is an incredible coach. You know, and it's often just things don't work, and in the NFL they need their pound of flesh. It's somebody's got to fall, or eventually the head coach falls, and it's interesting to me, and I know this pretty well, and maybe people feel the other way, but you look at like Baltimore and Pittsburgh and the stability that they've been able to have in their organizations. A lot of that is because of the patience they've been able to show and kind of improve with people. You're right. In high school, a lot of times it feels like you have to, as the head coach, figure out a way to help that coach develop, as opposed to just like, this person's fired, because that's not really a reality at the high school level. Because like you said, these are great people. They come from different backgrounds, and their goals are aligned with what you're trying to do. You're trying to win, you're trying to develop, and you're trying to create a positive experience for young people. So that's always a positive. Typically, like to kind of touch on what Coach Drob was talking about, like I think of one of my favorite coaches ever, Derek Reagan. He was a championship baseball coach. He was a baseball guy, and he coached football also. But when he became the head coach and they started winning championships, and then he's working, all the time, and, people have a family, it became really difficult for him. And we both happened where I actually left and went on to take a job at Alvernia University, but he was at the point where he was letting me know, he's like, Coach, I can't keep doing this. He's like, and he was a huge asset to us. But we were really kind of stretching him thin, and it was really tough and challenging for him when it wasn't even his main sport, so that's something that's really difficult. But like you guys say, you're always trying to keep guys in any capacity you can, because, overall it adds value to what you're doing as a program. The one thing I would always try to do is, like, I would find when we had a job posting, I would email every coach in our coaching association, and I would text guys and I would put it on Twitter, like, yo, do you know anyone with this cert who's looking for a job? Here's our teaching contract. It's a great place to work, and, to answer any questions. But like you said, trying to collect and bring guys in. And then I always looked at it like I had to develop as a coach. So when I was a head coach, I don't feel I was as competent defensively, schematically, as I was offensively. And I had a luxury where Steve Duncan was an incredible defensive coordinator. We had, I felt like, a great defense in Group 4 year after year. And then he wasn't able to coach after the COVID season with us. And we had Quentin Michael, who played in the NFL, and he was awesome. But he had never coached high school before at this level. He'd coached younger kids and knew the NFL, and he was so smart. And it's just funny, like, I wasn't able to help him transition things like verbiage or drill setup because I didn't know it to the level that obviously he knew it. And, like, I just felt like I really failed him and let him down. So, like, that was something in my December to June. I'm like, I have to learn defense. It's the start reading the Cody Alexander books. I start picking people's brains, and I'm like, I have to know it to a point where if I do have, not that situation, but in the future, I have someone who's maybe newer to coaching or struggling or is versed in a different scheme than what we're trying to run, I can be better to support them. So that's something I always kind of looked at and thought about as well with staff.
It's an interesting point you made about Quentin Michael. I had Paul Gunther on our staff a couple years ago. His son Duke was a senior in our program. Paul, 20 plus years in the NFL. He'd been the defense coordinator for the Bengals and the Raiders. He's the DC at UNLV right now. And working with him for a year, I learned so much football. But he struggled at times to understand why we couldn't do certain things. He would just say to me, like, no, all you have to do is you have to have the safety or the quarterback go bang, bang, bang. And on his third read, and I'd be like, Coach, we can't get to a third read. Like he couldn't understand. So in a way, it's fascinating because without tooting our own horns, I think the three of us all know a hell of a lot of football, but it's like we're maybe we're on a master's level. Well, these guys have doctorates from Princeton in football, and Paul would start whiteboarding stuff. And I understood what he was talking about conceptually, but the speed at which he processed information and moved from thing to thing was just way faster than I could process it. And I began to get a great appreciation just for how good these guys are. And then to hear Kevin Stefanski have to talk about firing guys that are this good, it was really fascinating to me, man. You are firing some of the best in the world at what they do. But sometimes it's not just that they don't have the knowledge. Sometimes they're not a good fit. I mean, I had to fire an offensive coordinator early in my head coaching career who was a friend of mine. Like we would play golf together. I learned a ton of football from him. He was a really brilliant guy, but his vision for our program and what we needed to do and my vision for it just were not on the same page. And it was like, I couldn't get him to kind of bend. And so sometimes you got to move on from good people. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So, all right, let's talk about this. Coach talked about a lot of the preparation stuff. You go through the combine and free agency, the draft, et cetera. Finally, you get to the mini camps. You get to kind of put your hands in the clay, and start working on stuff. He said that they use all that stuff for install, so that when they get to actual training camp, they don't have to reteach anything. And I always like to ask this of coaches because I think it's a tricky question. How do you guys know when to install concepts, new schemes? What do you start with? What is your thought process when it comes to install? Because you've got this massive amount of X and O stuff that you want to get in. How do you prioritize? How fast do you move? How do you know when to add, etc.? Steve, I'll let you jump in first.
I was gonna say I actually want to hear Coach Drob's answer on this first.
Okay.
And I'll answer on my end, but I just think that I don't know that I have this answer right because I feel like I do it differently every year. One of the things really cool now, so at EHT I coach with Rob Davis. Rob Davis started the program at Barnegat. Like he was the first hire in the district and built the program from scratch, which is a really cool thing. And he has a great wealth of knowledge of install and communication and system. And it's kind of like once he has it rolling, I don't want to say like you roll the ball out, but it builds upon itself and you're able to teach, especially the longer you're there. Like this is our third year here together at EHT. We have hit kids who have had 3 years of an install. Like they pick it up much faster than our first year. So that's kind of cool too. But I was fascinated listening to Coach Stefanski talk about like theirs is so much less development because of the level of talent in the NFL. They're acquiring players, but like you're not developing guys the way that a high school program may become dependent on. And then at the situations we're at, like we're not like we get who we get. So we have to constantly discuss and look at things like, okay, what are tenets of what we want to do offensively or defensively, but then make sure that we're utilizing what a player can do well within the system of what we're trying to do, and put them in position to be the most successful. And you're not kind of square peg and round hole. I feel like in hindsight, I look at what I've done over the years offensively, and I feel like I could have square pegged and round hole, and it makes me cringe. Like I'm always trying to think of that. So being with Coach Davis, he's got a really good mind of how to building within what he wants to do systematically, but then being able to take advantage of what particular players you might do well. As an opponent and kind of watching, I think Coach Drob and what they did at East really fit their personnel extremely well. And it was so schematically sound and kind of tight and packaged that I think you did a really good job maximizing that. So I'm kind of interested in hearing your answer here. But I always kind of go back and forth on how much should be installed in June and July, how much versus camp. Do you want to teach, like if we're teaching a course, is it the, offense 101? Are we getting to 200 level, 300 level? Do you do as much as you can and kind of repeat it once camp starts? I don't know that there's a direct answer. I know I've definitely tried them all. But if I figure it out, I'll definitely let you guys know what works best.
Yeah, I was gonna just piggybacking off that. I was gonna say as a coordinator, right? So as a head coach and a coordinator, I think this is the part we love. And it's probably we wish it was more. It's probably 10 to 20% of the time we can really put in. As a head coach with all the duties that come, and I still do run the offense. But it's that way of developing and planning things out that I really love and I really enjoy. I know with Coach Stefanski, I know he still is heavily involved with the offense and everything. So I know he touched on that a little bit. But I think for us, I just thinking about when I looked at our reports at the end of last season and looking at what we had done, this is probably even 2023, seeing what we had ran in the plays, and it was like, why did we spend time even installing this play? Why did we run this? Why did we worry about it in July and we ran it 3 times? Just reflecting on that and then just taking stuff out. Because as an offensive lineman, I felt like I had a really, really good understanding on the run game. I'm still learning more now, but I feel like the pass game, I just didn't really know how to pair it with the run game. I didn't know, what formations I liked it out of and all those things. In my first, 2 years, we just had so much different stuff. I didn't really piece together, like we'd run these formations, which were maybe they're spread formations in the summer, and then we're coming in the season and we're in these run packages, and it's like, well, we ran 150 reps of this pass play, and we can't even run it if we wanted to. So I think just understanding what kind of all goes together, and how we can teach it all at once. And so it might be a run, play action, a pass all 1 week. And then kind of same thing this year. I'm down to 3 weeks install in terms of especially run game. We had a couple extra things. This would be our week 4 technically in the summer. A couple extra pass things. But we got all the run game in 3 weeks. And now for me, it's having everything in and getting good at it and adding more to it. So just expanding out now, motions and formations and everything you can do with it. But we were able to really, I just keep cutting down every year. There's so much. My D coordinator, who's a great coach, he was a head coach for a few years at Riverside, Dom Cesare. He always says it's expensive, time's expensive. And I put there's only so much time we got. And when guys want to add in new schemes on offense or defense, if something's going in, we got to find a way to get it out. But I think in the beginning, I was like, all right, that's a cool pass concept. It looks good. It looks good on that highlight on Twitter and everything. And this NFL team runs it. But yeah, you're installing it, and then you got 100 pass plays for 50 plays in a game.
Yeah, the one thing I've learned is you can't go down the Twitter, Instagram rabbit hole. You can't hang out on Dan Casey's site just pulling all the cool plays that he puts up there and decide that you're going to run that stuff, because then you just have this mishmash. I just want somebody to tell me, all right, here's the way you do it, because there is no manual, right? I've done it both ways. I've gone really slow. I've gone like, hey, all we're doing is we're putting an inside zone, and we're going to put in a boot off that and a drop back pass, and we're going to drill the hell out of that till we get good at it, and then we're going to move on. And I've done it. We're throwing everything at them in minicamp in June, and then we're going to suck at it for a long time, but we're going to get better and better and better and better because we're not going to add anything. I don't know which is the right way to do it. I really don't. I was hoping you guys would tell me. So.
Yeah,
all right, let's
possible.
Yeah, it is, man. And you just got to find what works for your kids. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So real quick, next question. You can be brief with this one. Ready? We're coming up, believe it or not, man, we're coming up to the end of the open session, like a couple more weeks, and then boom, you shut down July. Most teams have some kind of little blackout period. And then August 4th or so, or whatever the date is, it's officially the season. Give me one thing that, like, when you're done these summer workouts and you get to camp, give me one thing that you need to have accomplished in the June-July period.
It's a great question. I would say, I said this to our guys, I really feel, and it might be cliche, but I need to feel like they really, they came together as a group. Truthfully, I feel like they need to come together as a group, and they know how to compete together. They need to kind of understand who the leaders are, what guys they're looking at to lead the whole group, even if it's lead their position group. And that's in terms of just overall like team building. In terms of schematics, I think we are on the boat where we want to have our stuff in. We want to have it in. We want to feel like everyone knows it. And then we want to learn in August in camp, kind of like Coach Stefanski talked about. We want to focus on football. We want to be more tackling, more, blocking, more, playing the game. We don't want to teach you how to run, a basic concept. We don't want to teach you how to kick out on a counter. We don't want to teach you how to, run a dig route, things like that. So we want to have the basics in, the fundamentals, and we want to know kind of what the team is and how it's shaping. And it's different every year. I mean, no discredit to our guys this year, but we had captains in June last year. This year we don't have captains right now because we're letting it kind of play itself out, seeing who's going to step up and become those guys. Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting. I didn't even think of that aspect of it. I would say two parts. So the non-schematic side, I want to see that we know how to practice. Like, we take the field with some urgency. We fly around in drills. We compete if it's any kind of station, rotate. Like, we look like a functional operation of a program. Like, if you came out and never saw us or heard of us before, you would look at how we operate as a program in a practice and think like, wow, these guys are well coached. This is a serious team. And that's something that you do kind of have to learn and instill during this time, which I think is really good. The schematic side of it, like, I want our base. Like, no matter what we see, can we line up defensively and be sound and execute our base? Offensively, like, I always use a gauge, and I would tell our coaches, I'm like, we could move the ball in a scrimmage today. Like, we learned enough and executed enough as a system that I confidently feel like we could gain yards enough. We did it right enough. It's always ugly, especially early, but we look like what we're supposed to look like teaching the first time. And I always refer to it as like a coat of paint. Like, the first time you install, first time you rep in practice, that's the first coat. And it's not going to look great. But the next time that you do it, you put another layer on, starts to see, hides the blemishes, hides the old color, right? And it looks better and better and becomes more and more clear. So that's kind of what I wanted to see through all summer is, do we have the first coat on and you can start to see what the picture's going to be? And then are we executing and operating at a program level that looks like we can compete and win games from drill to drill, day to day, station to station, being coachable, hustling to the ball, eye contact, all those little nuances as well.
It is fascinating when you think about everything you have to get done. You never feel like there's enough time. But I've always, Tyler, to your point, I've always been big on the culture aspect in the team building phases in June and July. I just feel like, man, we gotta know who we are, right? And we're gonna get in pads and we're gonna hit and we're gonna amp all that stuff up. But man, before we get into pads, let's find out who are our alphas, who are our leaders, right? Who needs to have their hands held a little bit, man? Who's not ready for prime time? So yeah, that's a great evaluation process.
There's only so many reps, like you said. Like once
only
you get
so
to
many.
August, you got to know who's ready. Like you just got to know who's ready to play varsity football, who earned those reps, who's ready to, get in there.
The train's leaving.
Yeah, right.
The train's leaving. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to get you guys out of here on this question, right? I asked this of Coach Stefanski. He was funny because he kind of said, I don't know to this one in so many words. And I don't know if any of us do, but week 0 is going to be here before we know it. How do you guys know you're ready? How will you know when you line up for week 0, man? It's that coin toss and they're playing the national anthem. And as a head coach, in your mind, are you thinking to yourself, we're ready, let's go? Or will you not know?
I don't know. I genuinely don't think you ever know, especially at our level of high school. The only time you really have a chance is like when you bring back a group that's kind of been through it and done it before. I think at EHT we have one returning starter out of 22, right? So like that's a exciting thing to me because there's so much competition and there's so many guys developing. It's going to be fun how the picture plays out. But where you stand today, like we're not ready for week 0 today, but it's not week 0. So that's kind of interesting too. I always felt like how we responded. I know we had mentioned things like this before, but I wanted an inter-squad scrimmage, a quad, and then a game scrimmage before the game so that I see in a game-like setting, 4 different opponents, 4 different offenses, 4 different defenses, and not even how well we do, but how physical we are in that and how we kind of meet that challenge made me feel more comfortable going into that week 0 game.
I think the best indicator for us has been how physical we are in our scrimmages. I think just taking it from that. I think if you can get up and you can play physical, you can tackle, you can block. You're going to be in there, and you're not going to be in trouble early on in week 0 because that's the scary part. Yeah, they're not going to get punched in the mouth and be in trouble. I think 2 years ago we probably didn't show that in one of our scrimmages against the Cinnaminson team that was good that year, and it showed up in our first game. Probably pretty early in that one. And then last year we scrimmaged Washington Township and Seneca. Luckily, we got the same ones this year because I want to go against Washington Township and what they do. Everybody, they're bringing back almost everybody. So compared to what Coach Scanlon said, they have almost all 22 back. So for us, it's a great test, and that will probably be some separators for some guys. They'll show that they can kind of hang there, or they're going to show they can't. But I think we'll know a lot. 1 week into August when we scrimmage Township and see where we're at, because they ended our season last year and they got a lot of guys coming back in a great program.
Yeah. Mike's done a tremendous job there. I'll tell you this, one of the most confident times I've ever felt before kickoff in a week 1 game or an opening game, we lost 35-0. So I was like, damn, have I been deceiving myself or what? That's what I just thought. Maybe I was just looking at it through rose-colored glasses. Now I'm the opposite. I'm brutally honest.
I used to think of, so we played one time. We ended up with a pretty good playoff season, so we were what we were supposed to be. But, it comes so fast. And you try to think of, like, what's a situational thing. So we were playing Kingsway. They went to Group 5 championship. We were a playoff team. We had just come from a championship season. So it's a playoff type atmosphere. We were playing at Rowan because their turf was getting redone. It was a really great game. So it's like nothing all game. Next thing you know, we're down 7-0. Whatever happens, we tie it up with like 2 minutes left. And we got like an interception with like 30 seconds left. And because of like typical week 0 substitutions, misalignments, like you burn your timeouts early, and we started driving and like the clock was running, and I realized that like we never went over like clocking the football. So we're like, we had a kicker who was awesome. He was 10 for 10 on field goals the year before. He went on to be a college kicker. Like we could have won it on a walk-off field goal. And we like complete a pass, kid gets tackled, and I start yelling to clock it, and like half the team's looking at me. I'm like, oh my gosh. So it's just like one of those things of situational football that you don't realize if you cover or not in time, and you want to make sure you do. And luckily we got to overtime and we got the win, but like could have cost us, like against a great team, great opponent, could have cost us. So you're right. You never really know until, I don't want to say it's too late, but where you're trying to figure things out on the fly, that makes it really tough as well. But it's part of the fun, especially for how quick and how early week 0 comes.
Yeah.
First year as head coach, quick story. I mean, you really have no idea. With your first time as a head coach, I thought we were going to be really good. I thought we were putting it together in the offseason and go to Morristown. They had a pretty good team that year, 2022, and I give a great pregame speech. Everyone's excited. I'm a young head coach, 26 years old. We get the ball. We go 17 plays. On the 18th play, we're at the 1 yard line. The running back, as he's going in, ball gets punched out. They recover it in the end zone, touchback, and they will scored, I want to say, 35 unanswered from there. I think it was 35-7. Yeah, we always say, like, if we scored there, man, we might have had a chance. We just deflated, but like I just think that was the adrenaline of everything.
Yeah.
We just weren't ready. Yeah, and that's who we were really the rest of the year. That's kind of the team that we kind of were the rest of the year, right around 500. All right, this is really who we are. But you have no idea going into the game.
Yeah. Coach, you said something that made me chuckle, because as a young head coach, I put a lot of time into the pregame speech. I thought it mattered. I really thought it mattered. And then I realized, that adrenaline wears off after about 3-4 minutes, and then it's playing football, and then it's blocking and tackling and all that. So I'm not saying that I didn't think about it in later years, but the emphasis got put in very different places,
Right, yeah.
That's fun. Exactly. Coach, it's funny. I was the opposite. Like, I never knew what to say. I couldn't think of anything ever on the spot. My coaches would always be in the office laughing at me. The refs would come and hurry us up. I'm like, oh, here we go. I'd go out there, say a couple choice words, but like you said, 4 steps out of the locker room, kids already forget what you're talking about,
Yeah, man, if you can't block and tackle, it ain't going to matter what the hell you said. So, right. Guys, this was a blast, man. I really appreciate your time. Great to hear your thoughts. Hopefully, you've shared some things that other coaches can benefit from, and absolutely wish you guys the best of luck this year.
Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it, man. We'll see you soon.
You do play each other again, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Week 3, week 2.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be interesting to say the least. So
it wasn't last year. It was not interesting at all.
All right, man. For Coach Steve Scanlon, for Tyler Drob, this is Kevin Smith, Call Sheet Daily. Join me again tomorrow. That's our Hot Route Friday episode with Pez from Pez's Picks, conversations about football and life. That's become a really fun show. So join me for that. Until then, have a great day, everybody.